Welcome to Season 4 of the Knack for Business podcast.
So, question to the audience. Why does job hunting or finding the right talent feel so broken? And how can you fix it without wasting time or missing opportunities? That's exactly what Garrett will be talking about today. He'll reveal how treating the job search like a sales funnel and using AI tools like Callings.ai can turn a chaotic process into a clear path toward the right hire or your dream career. So listen in, and Garrett's going to share some practical funnel strategies, Silicon Valley insights, and AI-driven tips that will help startups and SMB owners attract top talent or land the role that truly fits their calling. If this sounds like the guidance you need, connect with Garrett too. He's on LinkedIn, and Callings.ai is the website to start transforming your search for a job or hiring process. So, our guest is Garrett Rice from, guess what? Callings.ai. He's the co-founder of the business, and it is an AI-driven platform that reinvents the job hunt to help people discover not just what, not just work, but their true calling. A Silicon Valley veteran with leadership experience at Apple, Next, and Maxon, Garrett had joined longtime collaborator Philippe Caillou to build a people-first alternative to today's broken job search. Drawing on decades of tech leadership, he's transforming how individuals connect with meaningful careers. Garrett is also returning as he's been a guest here on the Acts Business before, and he'll have a very familiar voice if you've been listening to us. He brings fresh insights and purpose driven innovation. Garrett, absolute pleasure having you back again. Do you have a favorite quote or saying, sir?
Well, first of all, I just thank you guys for having me back. Always love chatting with you. So my favorite quote, I have something that my dad gave me years and years ago, which I think says it best, which is only people who risk are free. And I have that on my wall, and I think that's my favorite quote.
I got a question for you. What was the knock on the side of the head where you said the myth where the system we have is broken and we need to 180 it? What was that aha moment?
Around the job market,
Yes.
well, so I met my partner Philippe. We were both in between jobs and we're looking for a job. I had not looked for a job in quite a long time because I'd been at Apple for a while. Um, and I was startled at how much it's changed just in the last, 5 to 7 years. I think that the job market now is fundamentally different than it was even in, say 2015, 2018. There's so many dynamics that have affected it, and almost all of them are negative for the job seeker. Obviously, right now we're going through a revolution with AI, and a lot of companies are viewing that as an opportunity to cut back on their workforce. But I actually think that's a late entry. I think there's other dynamics that have had a big impact as well. And one of the big ones is what happened during the pandemic and the change to Zoom and online meetings. That has led to almost every job now being a global job. You're competing against people everywhere. It used to be if you were applying for a job here in Silicon Valley, you had to live here. That's no longer true. And I think that's true for all jobs. There are some jobs you have to be there for, but a lot of jobs now you can be remote, you can be hybrid. And so as a result, it's opened up every job to people everywhere. And so it's become dramatically harder. And the second dynamic is, sort of the advent of technology in the job market. So, you used to send your resume in and they would review it. Now, there's so many resumes coming in, they're all being evaluated by technology. In fact, something like 80% of resumes now are never read by a human being before being rejected. And so all of these dynamics have made it a global job market in which you're competing against a lot more people and you're having a much more difficult time getting seen or considered for a job. And then again, you add on AI's revolution on top of that, and it's a perfect storm of difficulty for a job seeker.
Wow. So, when you say perfect storm, what are you finding out from the market that's out there, or the people searching for jobs? What are you finding? What are you discovering that their emotional reality is like?
Their emotional reality is not good. Most people are, many of the people on our platform are very experienced people, and accomplished people. And it's been debilitating for many of them to have to go through this to not get a sniff after applying to a lot of jobs, or, going through rounds of interviews, and not getting considered. But most of the time they're happy if it happens. The most common thing that's happening right now is ghosting. You apply to 10 jobs, you never hear back from any of them. They don't even tell you when you're rejected. You just disappear, which I think, hey, if you're a hiring company out there, you know, do the people that are interested in working at your company a solid. And if you're not going to consider them, send them a note and let them know. Interestingly enough, a lot of companies don't. And I think that that's not a good practice. And from the job seeker side, it's difficult, right? To try and put yourself out there every day. In some cases, I've talked to people who are over a year into their job search, and so those are big challenges, right? Already a job search is one of the top 4 or 5 most stressful things you can go through in life, right up there with, illness, or, something happening with your families. So this is a tough thing for job seekers, and because the game has changed, I think it's important for job seekers to understand what has changed, and what their new process needs to be. Uh, and that's what we spend a lot of time talking about, and that's the platform we've built. Callings.ai is built around the modern job hunt, which is what we call it, and these dynamics and these changes, with the goal of making them successful in this new reality.
Yeah, the term sales funnel. Usually you understand that from a marketing perspective. You understand that as a salesperson. And I don't I'm trying to I know you have to sell yourself, so to speak, the charm, the grace, the knowledge that you have. But I remember applying, in my teens up for jobs, and never thought of it as a sales process. How did you come about to that thought? How did that become the reality that people should
Well, as again, we spent so much time looking at all this, talking to literally hundreds of job seekers, career coaches, HR professionals, maybe even thousands, I guess. And that was the dawning reality, is that it's changed. Early in my career, one of my first jobs was as a salesperson. I moved into the product side, which I enjoy a lot more, but I learned really valuable lessons in that process. And the biggest one is, you have this perception that, customers are know about you and are pinging you, and are interested in your product, when in reality, once you start as a salesperson, you realize they really aren't, because they don't know about you. And so, you have to put yourself out there in a really big way, and it's all volume, right? And you learn about, the sales funnel, right? It's the first thing you learn in sales, right? Is at the top of the funnel is getting as many people as possible to know what's going on with your product, and why and what the benefits are, so that you can matriculate them through the process of finding a smaller number that are customers, right? And, usually it's, at the top of the funnel. And, what I finally learned in my sales job is, I had to make at least 100 calls a day. This was before I'm old enough that this was before, technology made it much easier. There was no Dripify when I was starting out. You had to literally get a list and make phone calls. And if you did those phone calls, then a certain number of those people would become prospects. And it was always a small percentage, right? So if you made 100 phone calls, you might get 3 or 4 people that are interested in calling and talking to you. And of course, if you do it for a week, you've called 500 people, and you've gotten 15, people that have made it through, that are interested in talking about your product. And of those 15, over a couple weeks, you might close 1 or 2. And then it's rinse and repeat. You have to do it over and over again. And if you do it and you have that as your Zen practice, kind of like washing dishes, or, whatever, or sweeping, you wake up at the end of the month and you've got enough sales to hit your quota, hopefully go over your quota. And, and some of those people buy your product and become customers. And, and that's it. if you didn't make the phone calls, then none of the other parts happened. If you didn't fill the top of your funnel, the middle part of your funnel, you couldn't develop, couldn't keep those conversations going. And so, I learned that lesson, and it's come back in many ways in my career. I mean, I think the funnel is, um, and by the way, the companies use a funnel too, right? They ask people to apply for their job, and they fill the top of the funnel with candidates, and then they evaluate them and come up with a smaller number that they can interview, and then they process those people down to making a final offer. So it's a funnel on both sides. And I think most of the time, at least when I was early in my career looking for a job, the funnel worked really well because of the market dynamics. There weren't, there was kind of an equal balance between people looking for a job and the number of jobs available in your geography. And if that balance was off, then you couldn't get a job. But generally, it worked out pretty well, and you could call 3, 4, 5 companies and say, "Hey, are you looking?" And you get a couple interviews. So the funnel was narrow, but that.
Garrett, I'm allowed one weird question in an interview, and here it is.
I
There are
can't wait.
there are two groups of people shouting. One group says AI is destroying humanity, and the other says AI is an amazing tool to add to productivity, to build commerce, to build you, and to build the economy. Can you thread that needle for me?
Sure. I think they're both true. I think they're both true. I think we're at a motor vehicle moment, right? I saw this. I wish I could tell you who this guy was, but he posted this great video on YouTube that I watched, and he showed a picture from 1905. It was the St. Patrick's Day parade in New York City, and in it, he said, if you look carefully, you'll notice one car in this picture, and it was all the people in the parade, and everybody had horses and wagons, and way in the back, you could see, like a very early, not even a Model T, whatever came before a Model T. And he said, now I'm going to show you the same similar photograph from 1910. And he says, in this picture, there's only one horse. And it was just loads and loads and loads of cars on the street. And way in the back, there was some guy on a horse. And he said, that's what happens when you're in the middle of, a revolutionary product trend, is it fundamentally changes society and everything. And if you think about it, in 1905, there was literally millions of people whose lives were based on horses and wagons and leather and saddles. The proverbial buggy whip people, right? And and the motor vehicle changed all of that in a very fast period of time, and all of those skills became irrelevant fast. And we don't read about it. You don't hear about what happened to those people, you know, but they all went through a fundamental life change. They were no longer being hired as farriers or as people who could build wagons, wheelwrights. Some of them transitioned over, and the people who are leather skilled people built interiors for cars, and that type of thing. And I think there's a very, really, really valuable lesson what's going on with AI. It's gonna scramble everybody's eggs. It's going to. We're the next parade is gonna be all AI. We're in the parade now where there's a few pieces of AI out there, but the next parade is gonna be all AI. I don't know how it's gonna shake out, but it's going to fundamentally overthrow a lot of expectations people have about how things work. It's going to hurt. People are going to lose their jobs. Their skills are going to atrophy because people aren't interested in using them anymore. And AI is going to take over. And at the same time, there's, people getting paid $1 million if they have certain expertise in AI right now. And like getting these insane offers from these tech companies if they have these specialty skills. And so the transition is occurring, right? Those auto mechanics in 1905, man, they were high demand and got paid a lot because they had a specialty skill that there weren't many people for. And so this is the transition. It's going to be AI everywhere. It's already happening. I think I read somewhere that last year, 57% of all the content on the internet was AI developed. And that this year, it's going to be more like 90%. So I don't have an answer for exactly what people should do, but I think that you've got to look at AI as not something you can stop. It's inevitable, and try and evaluate how it's going to change things. And everybody says this, and it's probably cold comfort for people, but you have to learn it. You have to understand it. You have to demystify it. It's not a monster. It's a technology. And it's not all encompassing as the AI people explain. I mean, the more I use it, the more I realize it's a remarkable technology, but it is just a technology. It doesn't understand what it's like to eat an ice cream cone and probably won't for a very long time. But it will take certain things like developing slogans for your marketing campaign and accelerate that process about a hundredfold. And so if you were hired to sit around and write slogans on a whiteboard and then go home and eat dinner, if you're not using AI, that job is going to go away. And so I encourage everybody to use it and use all the aspects of it. Go vibe code. Go you do some prompting and build some prompts based on your vertical area of skill. And first and foremost, build it into every part of your workflow. You know, maybe the automobile is not the right one. Maybe it's fire. If the early people who embraced fire and understood how to use it without getting burned, they did pretty well. And the rest of the people stood out in the cold and they struggled. It's cold comfort, I know, but it's better to accept the reality and just move on and say, all right, this is our new reality, and find your path in it. And that's what my partner and I are doing. That's what most of the people that I'm talking to here in Silicon Valley are doing. And you can too out there. It's that the amazing thing about technology is it used to be geofenced and you had to be near it. And thanks to the proliferation of the internet and all these technologies, you can be anywhere in the world and be right at the center of all of this stuff.
So to be the consummate salesperson of yourself and leveraging AI, how does Callings AI merge these elements? In other words, I'm here, ta-da, I've brushed my teeth, combed my hair, taken the shower, I'm presentable, I'm clothed, all the check boxes are done. And then
Always important when you're going to go look for a job, be
well,
clothed.
well, it depends on the nature of the business, but yes, yes. So for the 99.9% of the businesses, yes.
Fair.
If you're a beekeeper or something like that. But how does Collins AI take all these assets? In other words, you the asset, or your persona, the AI asset, and then kind of bring you into one box and go, ta-da.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And maybe we can just talk through it. I did build some slides to try and explain this a little bit. But, um, uh, you know, uh, let's start at the top, right? So, if you're a job seeker, we've talked about the sales funnel. What is a sales funnel? It's a process of processing a large number of contacts into a number of qualified leads, and then the qualified leads into people who have the intent or interest in buying your product. And then you close on those people to try and get somebody to take action. And if you're selling a widget, the final transaction is, you hand money over in exchange for the widget. In the job market, the only difference, right, is that you are the product. And this is the most important thing. And then if you're looking for a job, you are the product and the company is the customer. And so you are selling yourself to the company. And I know this scares a lot of people because they don't like the idea of being a salesperson or a marketing person, especially if you're an introvert. But that's the reality of it. Whether you like it or not, you are the product, and you need to advocate and you need to market and sell yourself to the companies. Your sales kit or tools are the things that the company can see about you. So it's your LinkedIn profile, your resume, it's the recommendations you get from other people. It's, the cover letter that you send. It may be the portfolio that you have on GitHub if you're an engineer, or on Behance if you're a designer. It's your social media. They look at that too, right? So all of those things are different reflections or ads for you out there. And and those are the tools that you provide. You need to push people through that sales process to close the deal. The interview is your pitch, by the way, and that your goal is to get to the pitch, right? So in a sales function, most people don't return your call. You leave a message and they don't return your call. And the dream is to get to the point of talking to somebody. And that is also true in a job hunt, right? Because you can't sell the product if you don't have a personal connection with them. And this is why 70% of all successful job hunts have some form of networking. You have to talk to somebody. They have to know you. Nobody's going to hire you if they don't know you personally. And so your job with your resume and through your job hunt process is to move from a piece of paper or, an online digital representation of a piece of paper, which is your resume or LinkedIn profile. But that's not you. That's that's an advertisement, a flyer out there advertising you. And you need to move them to a discussion with you, right, to do that. And that's why when you go to a used car lot, the guys always walk all the way across and accost you. Hey, what do I need to do to get you into a car today? They're trying to build a relationship. My opinion is generally they do it poorly because they accost you instead of just talking to you, but that's what they're trying to do. And so when we talk about a sales funnel, your awareness or your marketing campaign is everything you put out into the universe to say to people, I'm looking for a job. I'm a really great candidate. And then you need to move to a discussion point where you have what's called consideration. And that's where you actually can talk to people and advocate for yourself and that they're actually looking for you, right? So, in a job hunt, the application process is the awareness process, right? So you submit to yourself for consideration. And of course, right now, the vast majority of those people are rejected because you get through applicant tracking systems and digital technologies. And now we'll get into it in a bit, but we work hard to help you increase your odds of getting through that first gate in what is a very complicated slalom course. And then if your resume gets plucked out of that pile, and you get to the consideration phase, that's generally when you get your first interview. And you want to go through that process and get them to understand you. And there's two ways to do that. For consideration, you need to be in the system or apply, and then you need somebody to see that resume and pick it up. And that's usually the best way to do that is networking. You need to get out there and connect with people so that they know. And, that's generally how you get hired is somebody, there's the average job post now is 250 applicants. And if it's a popular company, it could be thousands. And so you have to say to yourself, first, I've got to be in there, because if you're not in there, you have zero chance of being considered. But you also know that if you are in there, you have a very low chance of being considered unless you take other action. And so when your resume is in the pile, and many companies will not consider anybody who is not officially in the correct process in HR, so you need to apply for the job. Then networking comes in. You need to find people at that company that know about you. The difference between success and failure in a job hunt is that somebody inside the company picks your resume out of the pile and carries it over to the hiring manager and says, this person is interesting. Now, if they're really a good advocate, they'll say, you would be crazy not to hire this person. But whatever happens, the hiring manager then knows you more than a piece of paper. This is a person who's been advocated. Somebody has an advocate. Now, that doesn't mean you get the job, but you've moved to that next stage. You're in the consideration pipeline then. Somebody said that Wayne Pratt is a really great guy and I should hire him. I will now consider Wayne Pratt. Now Wayne, of course, they're going to find out about your prison record and stuff like that. And so, so be careful, but, at least you're in consideration. And then hopefully they like enough about what your resume says and what this advocate says for you or however they've heard about you that you move to the interview phase. And that's the intent phase, right? So they have the intent to hire you if you're the right person. Now you are competing against other products, other candidates, but that's the next step in this funnel. And by the way, if you start at 100 job opportunities that you've applied to and you submit 50 job applications and you network and get responses from 10 people and get 3 interviews, right? That's how the funnel works. It narrows and narrows and narrows to the point where maybe you get 1 or 2 offers out of those interviews if you're lucky. And the broader the funnel is at the top, AKA the more job opportunities you pursue and the more networking you do, the more intent you get and the more potential decision points you have at the very bottom where you get an offer. And this is the way the universe works. Now you might be lucky and submit 1 job opportunity at the top and go all the way through. That does happen. But on an odds basis, this pachinko machine is very unlikely to drop your ball into the right slot at the bottom if you only submit one ball. So you have to fill the funnel at the top. So that's the funnel. That's a sales funnel, that's a job hunt funnel. And what we do at Callings is we've studied this and we've built a workflow system for managing and accelerating all of this so that you can fill all the aspects of your funnel with high quality content and actions that will lead you to the bottom of the funnel getting multiple offers. And we do this by building, we're using artificial intelligence. We were talking about it, right? We know that a modern product cannot be successful without using AI. And we've leaned into it. Our entire platform is AI. Every aspect of it is AI. And it allows us to provide benefits to end users in terms of helping them build their funnel. And so what we do is we start at the top, right? Which is if you're going to put the word out there about your product, you have to know what your product is. So we help our users understand themselves better. We help them identify where their skills and talents are. We help them come up with a personal brand statement and messaging around how to advocate for themselves, which is beyond what a resume can do. A resume is simply a list of what you've done in the past, artfully written, hopefully. But that's not enough. You need to be able to tell your story. And that's really hard, right? What I've heard a lot, and then, career coaches say that and they help you a little bit, but like, you're kind of like, what do you mean my story? I don't know what it is. And so what we do is, we have a thing on our platform called My Insights where we start with your resume, we read it, and we ask you questions about yourself. And when you answer, we help you generate all of the things, all the materials you need to tell your story, right? A 20-second elevator pitch, a list of the unique talents that only you have, a list of skills that you have, which is a lot of ATS systems are really dumb and they just look at, this is a computer programmer job with Python. Is Python listed on this resume? If no, reject, right? And, a lot of times people get rejected even though they're really qualified because of those mistakes. So, what we do is we build those pieces of material for you so that your marketing campaign isn't you coming up with it in a vacuum, sitting at your house with your dog depressed that you don't have a job. What we do is we present all of those options to you based on what you told us, and then you can tinker with them or else. So that's number one. The second thing we do is we use semantic search and we go out onto the internet and we look for jobs that you're qualified for. So it's very important in this modern environment that you have a good shot of being considered when you apply. Now, if you are a longtime systems engineer and you're applying for a product manager role and you've never been a product manager, you're going to be auto rejected almost unanimously. So know thyself and then find job opportunities. And we do that. We find a ton of job opportunities for our people using AI and semantic searching. And then we give you a score to give you a sense of how close you are. And that's the first part or awareness part of the funnel. And then you have to apply. And we give you the tools to do that. We help you customize your resume so that you project the right image for the hiring company, not through lies, but by making the best positioning of your true skills. And we help you author a cover letter, which is your intro into that world. And then we help you apply and you apply to that job. Right. And so now you're at the top of the funnel. You're in, you've applied for the job, you've put your message out there into the world. This is where our platform is unique. The next thing we do is we go and we look and find people who are close to that job at the hiring company, the hiring manager, the recruiter, people on the team, people connected with the team. And we share those profiles with you. And in one click, we generate outreach messaging, which you can customize and prompt to get to an exact state that you like. And then we either copy that information over so you can message it on LinkedIn, or we find the email address of those people so you can outreach to them. So that's that next step, right? Where you want to move into consideration. And then after you've done that, and hopefully you've done that for a single job, you at least reach out to 2 or 3 people. We try and bring you between 5 and 7 contacts when we can. And, you're dialing for dollars at this point, right? You want as many people to know about you as possible as help you. And so the networking piece is the critical piece. And then hopefully a certain percentage of those applications, and you need to do a bunch of them. On average, a job seeker will need to apply to a minimum of 50 jobs to be considered on average. Now, again, some people, they apply to 3 and they get them. Some people we've talked to have applied to 500 and haven't gotten one yet. So on average, 50 jobs. Um, and then you get the interview. That's still not, you haven't closed the deal, but you're now at the bottom of the funnel where you're actually, trying to get intent. They have the intent of hiring you if you're the right person at that point. And then you give your sales pitch. And again, going back to the stuff we generated, we help you with the pitch. We help you remember all the skills, the accomplishments that you've had so that those are at the tip of your fingers. So when you go into the interview, you can present your best self. And then finally, you get to the decision point, hopefully that they loved you and that they make an offer. And so, again, maybe 100 job applications at the top of the funnel, 50 to 100, and working your way down. But I want to talk a little bit about, and we manage all of those steps, by the way, inside of Callings. But the thing that I wanted to really call out is how this works. Albert Einstein said that uh, the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. And what he meant, of course, is if you invest money and you continually earn interest every year, the way mathematics works, it doesn't just grow linearly, it starts to grow geometrically. And the same thing is true if you're using the funnel correctly. And let me explain how. So the average job month for everybody in the United States, at least, is 5 months. That's just the truth. Some of you will be out much longer. Some of you will get it quicker, but on average, 5 months. That's 20 weeks or about 100 days if you take off the weekends. And you should, right? You should not panic and try and work, 70 hours a week on a job hunt. You should pace yourself. But that's 100 days, 100 business days for you to work on your job hunt. If in those 100 days you apply to put in 5 job applications a day for 5 jobs, in those 100 days, you will have applied to 500 jobs. And if you network or send a networking contact out for each of those jobs, that's 1,500 contacts. And that's what compounding does. If you could tell your message to 1,500 people in the universe right now, your odds of getting a job are dramatically higher, right? So that's how the compounding effect of a funnel works. And so let me tell you now how Callings does this. So first and foremost, in your 100 days, we make it very easy to find jobs, and we bring them to you. We score them for you. We tell you the ones you're qualified for. And then we track them all in a tracker so you don't need to build your own spreadsheet, which is one of the first things we built on the platform because everybody we talk to is building their own spreadsheet. So you find jobs that we bring you, or you can use our extension and add jobs from LinkedIn or Indeed, or you can add them manually from hiring company sites. We're agnostic on where the jobs come from. We find you jobs, and very soon we're going to bring you 40 times the job inventory that we currently have. So we're very excited that that's coming soon. But there's a lot of places to find jobs. We don't care where they come from. We'll help you track them, bring them all in, and they're all in your tracker. And the application process, we auto-generate a first draft of your resume and a cover letter for you, which you can review. We show you exactly what we changed and we tell you why we changed it. And you can type in and change anything you'd like to make certain it reflects you well. But our experience in using and testing with our customers is they could easily apply to 5 jobs within an hour. So if you can invest on Callings 1 hour a day each week, you can get to your 5 jobs a day. And when you apply for the job, we go out and we find 3 to 5 to 7 contacts per job that are related to that job. And as I mentioned to you, we draft outreach messaging, we tell you everything about them. And so you can literally, with a few button clicks, send messages out to those 3 to 5 people per job. And so if you do that, you'll be applying to 5 jobs a day and networking to potentially 15 to 50 people. And then again, you just keep doing it. Right. And you take your notes, you follow up on the jobs that you've applied to after a couple weeks. We can help you remind you of that. And I think what you'll see as a job seeker is results will start to, right? Now, there's tons of work along the way. You need to make certain that you continually work on projecting your best personal brand. There's multiple types of networking. What I'm describing is targeted networking, and that is to say finding people that are directly connected to a job that you're pursuing, and we help you with that. But there's also your own personal network where you can increase your odds by going out to everybody you know and say, hey, this is, and remember, do the work. Know yourself and get your marketing materials in place. Don't just go out and say, oh man, I'm looking for a job. Go out there and say, I'm looking for this type of job. Here's my background. Here's my skills. Here's why I'm the right person for these jobs. If you hear anything, let me know. And by the way, you work at that company that I love. If there's something open there, let me know. And so, you're marketing, and you're marketing to your friends, to your family, to your business colleagues, to your associates, to your acquaintances. Man, if you do that, I think success is almost guaranteed. Short of like Wayne having, a really bad criminal record. No, I'm just kidding. By the way, if you do in the past, then I'm really sorry. I'm just going for the joke here. You know, you,
So
you've
How could I know I was on the wrong island?
you have rehabilitated yourself amazingly. I'll just say that. But that's it, right? That's what the funnel is. And and all I can say to people, and I always remind them of this, is it's less important that you focus obsessively on the results and focus more on the process. You can't guess which of the people you reach out to are going to respond to you. You can't guess which companies that you apply to are going to respond and have you in for an interview. You can have your own hopes and dreams about what that is, but it isn't worth obsessing about it. Keep the process going, keep the funnel going. This is where success comes from. This is what the hustle is. And it works. Now, that's the most important thing, is it works. And it's not as hard as you think if you paint by numbers using a platform like Callings.ai, right? At that point, then it's just a process. It's like washing dishes, maybe you don't like it, but if you just keep scrubbing the plates, eventually all the plates will be in the drying rack and you're done. So that's my message on the funnel and how it works in the modern job market. We have a lot of evidence to suggest that this is the way, as they say in Star Wars. And and I encourage any job seeker, whether they use Callings.ai or any platform, is to think in these terms, because it will lead you to success.
So if I want to become the dishwasher, how do I reach out to you to capitalize on the Callings AI?
Yeah. So if you are a listener to this podcast, I would encourage you to go to the following URL. Go to Callings, Callings.ai, Callings.ai. We will provide you with 30 days of free access to the platform so that you can try it out yourself in your job hunt. And so any Creative Insight listener can go to Callings.ai/K4B and try it out.
Garrett, I want to say thank you so much. I appreciate you coming back for a second round. I know the time delay, we're about, 3 hours out of whack. So you're up a little earlier, but we appreciate you coming. And Wayne Pratt, my co host, thank you. And you, the Knack for Business listeners, we appreciate your time, and hopefully you gained some insight out of this. Years ago, Garrett watched a brilliant friend lose confidence after months of failed job applications, a moment that fueled his mission to build Callings AI. Now he's helping people like yourself and others replace anxiety with strategy, and envisions a future where every career move feels intentional and empowering.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVISIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You, Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.